Well, Governor Cuomo has made it very clear that his top priority right now outside of the budget is to get a property tax cap passed. But while there's a lot of public support for the cap, the actual implementation is not going to be easy. There are a lot of moving parts here, and there are a lot of impacted parties, from schools to local governments. And that's why the governor has formed a 23-person team to come up with recommendations for mandate relief. Now, tonight we're joined by 3 members of that team. They are Republican Senator Betty Little, and across the table from her is Stephen Aquario from the New York Association of Counties. And then we have Tim Creamer from the State School Boards Association. Thanks, everybody, very much for joining me. This is sort of a complex topic, and we have talked about it here before. And we're going to try and make it a little bit less complex for people. Now, the governor made some comments about this yesterday that I just want to start off with, so let's give a listen to that.
Well, those two things are going. I don't know that they have to be in the same bill, Joe, but they are. I believe you need mandate relief. The definition of that is different depending on who you talk to, but I believe you need mandate relief and property tax relief. They could be one bill, they could be 2 bills.
That close to the February.
Okay, so I'd like to start with you, Senator, because eventually it's going to be the legislature that has to deal with this in terms of a bill, or maybe 2 bills. I mean, do you have a preference? There are a lot of people, local governments, who say you can't do one without the other. Schools also, I think, are saying you can't do one without the other, because if you cap our revenue stream, our ability to bring in revenue, then we are going to go broke, basically.
Well, you can't keep telling them what they have to do without providing the funds to do it with.
Right.
Or the flexibility to implement that mandate as they see fit for their appropriate school district, their town, their village, their city, or their county. We've been talking about mandate relief for years. We have all kinds of ideas for mandate relief, and yet none of those things have happened. Some as simple as, you know, streamlining the paperwork on the over 125 reports that schools have to give. The biggest one being taking special education, where we have federal mandates, and New York State has added mandates to that. And some of them are good ideas, but let's be flexible and suggest them and allow the schools to implement them as they can.
But do you think it needs to be an Uber package? In other words, does all of this have to be addressed as one big enchilada, if you will? Or can you do a property tax cap without mandate relief and then go back later? You're shaking your head. And
I don't think so.
I know why, because the legislature tends to do something and then not follow up with the second thing, right? I mean, that's the concern?
Scares me.
Okay.
I know that we've had situations before where we've been told, well, if you'll support this, we'll give you this. Okay, we've got our support here, and then that thing that had been promised never materializes. That's a real problem, and I know that the people I represent are scared to death that we might get fooled again, and it's fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, or something like that.
Right. I think the other thing is what you heard the governor here say, does that scare you even more? Because he seems to be wide open to any sort of possibility. Because the property tax cap is such a top priority for him, he needs to do a deal. And if the Assembly Democrats don't want to do mandate relief, and it doesn't sound like the Assembly Democrats are terribly interested at this moment, and they want to do a deal on property tax cap, then maybe he's going to have to take half of the loaf.
Well, to me, the decoupling of mandate relief and the property tax cap, I don't mind it. I don't mind the decouple because the facts speak for themselves. The budget gap, the deficit speaks for itself. If he's going to advance a property tax cap, fine. Let's pass a property tax cap in the state of New York. What then has to happen in terms of the state budget, which Senator Little will be instrumental in negotiating as we go forward, is the gap, is the budget deficit. They have to go hand in hand. And from the county perspective, we want to see spending controls coupled with a property tax cap. You just can't put in place a property tax cap and fool New Yorkers that that's going to solve their problems, their property tax bill. We have to help New Yorkers stay in their homes. Businesses come to this state, and we can only do that right now through spending controls, cost control. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is how is this governor going to reduce this deficit, this budget gap, put in place a property tax cap, and then simultaneously negotiate what's called mandate relief.
Okay, so the membership of this, we can't fit everybody around the table. Unfortunately, this table is quite small. Just with 4 people, we start to get a little crowded. But, you know, the membership of this particular body is actually quite diverse. Same thing with the Medicaid redesign task force. So diverse that you have people that barely can talk to each other sometimes on this thing. You've got the Civil Service Employees Association and the UFT. These are unions. You've also got the Assembly Democrats, who we couldn't get anyone to join us because we're having this big snowstorm, of course, that we're expecting. But those are disparate. Lots of voices. How do you get everybody to come to something that looks like an agreement by March 1st?
Yeah, I think it's because of the financial situation that New York State is in. We're losing population, losing businesses. We're #1 in taxes in the country. And something has to be done. And I think that's what's brought everyone to the table. And if we weren't in this condition, I don't think you could get these people to all come and sit at the table. And some of them are going to be there and defending their programs. You know, but I think that at least being there, talking about it, and agreeing to some things as we go forward. So something that comes out of this should have the agreement of all of the parties that were involved there. And there'll be give and take going on.
Yeah.
We've been told by the person who will be coordinating the Mandate Relief Task Force, Larry Schwartz,
Right.
give us your, what he referred to them as asks, the things that you think are the high priority issues that you would want to make sure are included. And I think his hope is that everybody will have some common ground. So we could perhaps agree on certain things.
Like a Boolean circle that everybody puts together their ask, and in the middle are 3 asks
That's
that we
it.
can all agree with?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope it's more than 3, because our expectation is that a tax cap is going to have enormous financial implications for school districts.
Right.
And to buy back, if you will, the deficit that will be wrought by this tax cap at a time when we're cutting state aid, at a time when federal funds are going down, we're going to need to be talking about big numbers, big things. It can't just be little things that we're going to be chipping around on the edges.
Okay, before we get to the ask, just a quick detour about Larry Schwartz. He is, of course, a holdover from the Patterson administration. He is not universally popular. There's been some criticism, not very loud, of him doing this, and it's unusual to have somebody who is a holdover from a prior administration given so much of a role in something that is so important. And I mean, this is really key to Governor Cuomo's really prime policy agenda item. It is the tax cap. He's talked about it in the campaign. He talked about it in the inaugural nation speech. He talked about it in the State of the State speech. He's made it clear. Larry Schwartz, does everybody think that he's actually going to be able to be a consensus builder?
Well, when the governor who launched this initiative introduced Larry Schwartz, he put his full faith and confidence in this individual to head up this team. Now, here's an individual who was the chief of staff in Suffolk County, to one of the largest counties in New York State, Patrick Halpin. After that, going to Westchester County as the chief of staff or deputy executive to Andrew Spano. Clearly has a tremendous amount of local government experience. Then he worked for Governor Patterson to get some state experience.
But he tangled with unions, remember?
He tangled with them. He is he's a tough guy to work with, but he's one that is respected by this governor, and we're going to take that for what it is. We're going to work with this governor. He made it perfectly clear that this is a charge that we should all keep an open mind. The governor said, don't come in here being defensive about your own parochial views and programs, to keep an open mind, have a discussion, try to work together in consensus. And that's what we have to do. I think that's what we must do at this time.
You're talking about a conference call that actually, there's already been a conference call of this body, right? And
Yes.
there's not been a physical meeting yet. Is there a
No.
date for the first physical meeting? We don't know yet. Okay.
No.
But there has been some initial discussion. So back to the ask issue. Do we know at this point, well, I mean, there are a lot of unfunded mandates. There's a lot of complaints about unfunded mandates. We've talked to local leaders on this table. We've talked to people all over the place. What do you think that the top possibility is that you could tackle that everybody might be able to get some kind of consensus on?
Well, there's always the Wicks law that we hear about, and then we've had modifications to that. And I think one of the big problems that why we can't get agreement on the Wicks law, doing away with it or changing it to some extent, is that when a contractor used to go in and bid on a bid and use all the subcontractors' figures, then get the bid and not hire those subcontractors. One of the things would be to require that the subcontractors you come in with are the ones that get the job too.
Just,
The
just
problem-
there has to be
the
some
problem
kind
with
of
briefly
protection.
reiterate, though, what the WICS law is for those of us who are not so up on it.
Well, the WICS law requires that you have multiple prime contractors, a general contractor, and then one for electronics,
Plumbing,
electricity,
electricity,
heating and
heating,
ventilation.
ventilation.
It's good for
Plumbing and
unions, is
plumbing.
it not? It's good for
Yeah,
unions.
but honestly, for school districts, now this may be in other municipalities, I don't know, but for school districts, a lot of the building has been done. Our enrollments are going down.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna see a
there's
lot
going to
more
be a lot of
construction in
help
school
there
districts.
with WICS. So as we put our list of asks together, when we talked about WICS, it didn't make the list because it's probably not one that's going to have a big enough number associated with it that's going to help us out tremendously.
So what would?
Well, we have come up with several of them. One of them would be and this isn't quite mandate relief, it's kind of odd. We're asking for a mandate that would say a minimum employee contribution to health care. 10% for the individual, 25% for the family coverage. Something that is collectively bargained, but we would like to have a minimum and then bargain from there. We think there should be a defined contribution plan available for new employees.
Absolutely. That's
pension
really
plan.
that's what's
This
going
is
to help.
pensions, what we're talking
Pension
about now,
plan.
right?
The private sector has done that, and that's helped them, and it should the state should at least offer that as an opportunity or choice.
Right.
Okay.
Triborough amendment allows for step increases, automatic salary increases in an expired contract. We think that contract should be frozen in time. We don't want anyone to lose their job or their benefits or anything like that, but we shouldn't have to pay automatic salary raises.
But again, aren't these things negotiable? I mean, isn't this stuff going to be
Triborough's
negotiated?
not.
That's not. But the other things are. I mean, pension would require a whole new tier, would it not? If you would have to freeze the current situation, and everybody who comes in new would then subsequently be beholden to whatever
We'd actually,
new
what
rules
we've
you
been
create.
talking about is giving them an option.
Option.
You can go defined benefit or defined contribution. The SUNY and CUNY employees have that option now. And it works, and we think that's something that should be followed.
Do you know, for local governments, is there some kind of thing that you're definitely, if you could only get one or you could only get two, is there something that
Well,
there is?
for us, as part of this commission, what we'd like to engage in a dialogue about is what are the services that government should provide its citizens? Then determine which unit of government is best situated to offer those services or deliver those services to the public, and finally, who should pay for them, or how should we finance those services?
Steve, we're going to do this in a month. I'm sorry, what are we at now? We're in mid-January? No, yeah, we're in the beginning of
We got
January.
about 6 weeks left.
We're a
We don't
victim,
have very
we're,
much
we're a
time.
victim of our own success at the county level. We're an efficient form of government, and the state has chosen to use us to be their bank and to use us to be their delivery vehicle.
Right.
It's caught up to us. It's why we're part of the problem of being the highest taxed state in the United States. So we have to look back, and for counties, there's about 9 programs that are consuming 100% of the property tax
Well, the
levy.
big one's
What are they?
Medicaid.
The big
It's
one is
gotta be
Medicaid. It's
Medicaid.
health and human services.
Right.
So from the county perspective, through this commission, we're going to focus on those 9 state-mandated programs, try to bring about efficiencies in the program, and give some counties authority and more control over their destiny.
Okay. 6 weeks is not a lot of time. I mean, is there at some point, maybe, I don't know, maybe at 5.5 weeks where you just call it quits and you say, okay, this is as far as we can get. There are these sticking points that we've been fighting over. We're going to have to jettison those and maybe come back later and talk about them some other time, because this needs to be, the governor says, implemented in the next budget. He's going to put out a budget on February 1st. So this isn't even going to be included, these recommendations, in his budget.
Well, I think it goes back to what Tim was saying a minute ago. If it's decoupled a property tax cap from mandate relief in the actual legislation, we have to trust this governor as we go through this budget session and the legislature to engage in a way that's going to produce an
It's
outcome.
a very big ask.
It's a very big ask, but that is the process that we have.
Okay, I want to just talk briefly here about the issue of transparency. Now, there is, I think, there are going to be public hearings. Has that been given? Have you been given any indication at all?
Not that we
Okay. Well, I think that the Medicaid redesign team is going to be having some public input. They've now got a website. We haven't seen it yet on the mandate relief side. However, I mean, what is your feeling about what kind of public access there should be to this kind of deliberation? Because, you know, and we've talked a lot throughout the years when I know about the legislature and its deliberations and the 3 men in a room, and how you have good government people saying we want in, and how you have other people saying we can't negotiate honestly and openly if you have the public there. Some people feel there's a chill in the room.
Well, and sometimes, but I think we've represented so many different groups in this that we can bring to the table issues that represent the public and represent all segments of the public. I think we're going to have to find 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever that we can agree on and start and offer those for March 31st or March 1st, actually. But I think my understanding was this committee would go on and
Yes,
continue to look at mandate relief. And many of the mandates are not done by the legislature. They're regulations. I sometimes say that, we talk about property taxes. I think for business, the regulations sometimes are more onerous than the taxes are. And these are just thrown out by agencies and all kinds of things by the administration that we could stop them.
Last word to
You
you
brought
there,
up
Tim.
special education a little while ago, and you're absolutely right. There's about 300 regulations that come out of out of the state education department on top of what the
federal.
federal mandates are.
Yeah.
And we do that more than any other state. Those have to be pulled back.
Okay, I unfortunately have to cut us off. As it always is when we have these roundtables, we can have a very long discussion. We will have a longer discussion. I want to thank you all for joining me. Tim Creamer, thank you. Steve Aquario, thank you. Senator Little, thank you very much.